And the aorist on the bottom of page 49.
Yes.
We're just changing things up to the particular verbs here and there?
Yeah, and I'm realizing sometimes that Black, he doesn't always explain everything as far as like idiosyncrasies are concerned. He'll explain some idiosyncrasies, but then others, they remain sort of elusive. So almost without even mentioning anything, he just, kind of takes it for granted, this kind of thing happening. But he will go on to point out, say for the third singular, it's elusen, because if you act like there's no nu at the end, the connecting vowel is a epsilon, rather than an omicron, which you would expect before a mu or a nu. Remember, the nasals would typically have a omicron before the, as a connecting vowel. But because an epsilon for everything else, because there's a nothing there, in a way, it's an epsilon. But then there's not a nothing, there's a nu right there. So I wonder if there's not more, just like English has certain rules about, or not rules, exceptions to rules about things, that there's something going on here. But to be honest, I'm not exactly sure why it does it. And Black doesn't say here either why it is the case that in the paradigm for the aorist, typically the first singular in the aorist has no suffix. And if the explanation is to create a distinction here, then why that's not the case in the imperfect, which has eluon in both. This is the first singular and the third plural. I don't know.
So do we need to make an imperfect chart and an aorist chart?
They want you to keep this in mind because maybe to try and make it easier to say that this is the paradigm with some exceptions, rather than say this paradigm, this paradigm, this paradigm, and come up with a whole bunch of different paradigms that almost identically overlap. Or that this was the paradigm, and they know that because of other research into the different, the Greek leading up to Koine Greek, and they say, no, this is actually it. But there ended up being exceptions, or the language evolved. So I'm not sure which is the case here. If this is like the known Greek paradigm that they always use, the way we might have a paradigm, say in Spanish is more paradigmatic, and this is the way it looks all the time, there's some exceptions. Or if this is the phenomenon is described like, is this prescriptive or descriptive? So a language that is being prescriptive would be telling you, follow this paradigm always. This is important to keep as a rule. So we're prescribing that you do it this way. Versus a linguist going back at, say, a dead language, and you just have a lot of data, like you just have a lot of text, and they're saying, all right, let's look for patterns. Well, we're noticing that the primary active, they follow this pattern, and we notice that the secondary active suffixes are this pattern, and so let's just make a chart out of it that describes what we're seeing, but it's not necessarily saying this was some rule that was taught to Greek school children. It's just describing a pattern we see as we ourselves, linguists, looking at it millennia later, want to lump things into categories. So I'm not sure if this is a description kind of thing by linguists after the fact, or if they know by studying Greek and maybe looking at Greek grammars that they gave to kids in the 1st century BC or something, and they taught them like this. They said oase, mente, husi, like we do, nu sigma nothing, mente, nu or san, like in class. Like maybe they did that, and then they tell the kids, all right kids, there's exceptions to this, here's the exceptions. So, say French is a very, very prescriptive language in that they are trying to preserve it. They have a whole national institute to preserve the language. So there's a lot of prescriptive things. You're going to follow this paradigm. Versus when you are studying ancient languages, typically you're just being descriptive. And you're just trying to find patterns and paradigms after the fact, whether they explicitly taught it or not, like prescriptively taught it or not. So yes, that's something that you start to notice real fast is, well, hold on a second. The aorist does not seem to have a new at the beginning or in the first active.
And is that always,
Yeah.
or is it just in the rule?
Almost,
Always, it seems.
yeah, it's almost always, yeah.
So why, I mean, just make a paradigm. You know, it'd be so much easier to.
I know, right? So when you look at 55, right, page 55, the first aorist active indicative principal parts, they're all no. And you remember, these are in the first singular, right? That's the lexical form is the first singular. Lexical form is the present active indicative, first person singular. So let me rephrase that. But these, in giving you the first aorist active indicative principal parts, they're all sa, ekusa, and him, marte sa. There's no new.
Seems like that is the rule, that's the case.
Yeah, but then if you look at the second aorist, which looks like the imperfect, the new is there. So
Yeah, because that's the rule. It says that. It says.
I know, but black is, again, this is more likely a descriptive thing than a prescriptive thing. And I think probably in describing the paradigms, they thought it's better to say that it's this with some exceptions than not. And I might surmise that there's something going on with the new dropping out. It is either, we don't want to confuse it with this, the third plural, or there's there's a phonological thing, meaning a sound they don't like. Remember, something about it they don't like. But then that doesn't make sense either because it's right here, right? You're going to find something happening when we get to participles where you're going to have an ending like nu, tau, sigma, right? When you start adding kind of things up, and they don't like this. Whereas we have them all the time in English. Like so many words end with NTS, yeah. So they did not like this, so you're going to have letters drop out. Okay, so I don't know if there's something like that going on that, gosh, I don't want to make up rules. You already got your head full of the actual rules, but maybe there's some greater phonological sound thing going on, and there's some original form to this that where letters dropped out. I don't know. If you want to make a separate kind of paradigm in your head for it, you can. I guess I won't stop you there. But it does seem confusing because you have the possibility of three different nus in the secondary active suffixes. So I would be interested, and I don't know if any text gets into it, of the evolution linguistically and phonologically of Greek, of the Koine, going into the Koine time. So maybe someone has a book out there. Again, my depth of knowledge of this is about, second level Greek, or second year Greek. I'm teaching you first year Greek. That's a little bit in my comfort zone, but beyond that, you get a little bit outside of it. So, okay.
May I ask one quick question?
Yes, you may.
Parsing something in its second aorist versus first aorist?
You can just say aorist.
You just say aorist?
Yeah. And you can say it if it's helpful to you to know it's not an imperfect, because again, one of the unique things about the second aorist is that they look like imperfects. So if it's helpful to you to say it, but technically speaking, you don't need to write that out. It's just aorist. Okay, any other questions? Wish there was an easier way to maybe put that on the screen, the previous chapters, but okay. Moving on to chapter 10, we come to the perfect and pluperfect active indicative. Perfect and pluperfect active indicative. Now let's review aspect. Remember, the Greek language cares more about how the action occurred or what comes of the action, making a commentary about the action, than the time of it. So we're not so much concerned about the past, present, and future in terms of when this happened. And so when you write an essay or you write a story, you have to keep all the tenses uniform. I remember reading a book and thinking it was significant that this was written in the present tense. So I was like, oh, this book is written it's a fiction book, it's The Hunger Games actually. And remember, it was written all in the present tense. So I thought, oh, I wonder if that's kind of an indication that the protagonist is still alive by the end of the series. Right? It's kind of a weird, thought I had. I don't want to spoil the book, but I don't know. I had this weird thought, like, oh, this was written in the present tense, so maybe the author, or not the author, but the protagonist, maybe writing it. It was written in the first person. I think it was the first person, present tense. So I thought, oh, it sounds like someone's telling this story, right? And so maybe the person still. I just remember thinking that, and you'd want to be sure if you're writing that way. It's kind of hard if you've ever tried to write a story in the present tense to keep it present tense, because it's very easy to slip into the past tense, like ed. When you write an essay, for sure, you've got to keep it in the same tense, almost always the past tense for your class, or you're just going to get dinged. Remember, in Greek, it's okay. If you go to the Gospels, they're constantly mixing the past and the present tenses, and that's because it's not so much making a commentary about the timing of it, but the kind of action. So if you're telling a story and you want to make it more vivid, you might put it in the present tense rather than the aorist. Now I'm going to throw a curveball at you because this is sort of modern takes on the Koine Greek. We've talked about aspect before in terms of the aoristic aspect and present aspect, so on. But let's talk about it this way. There's the imperfective aspect, the perfective aspect, and the stative aspect. And the imperfective aspect, the reason it's called imperfect is that it's these are the tenses that are continual, like the present and the imperfect. Remember, the present tense in Greek isn't so much about that it's happening now, but that it's happening continually. The imperfect does have more of a sense that this is happening in the past and happening continually. And there's no future kind of imperfect. But this is saying that it's not done. That's why, or complete. That's why it's imperfect. It's not, the action is not through to its end. You think of a train on a track. When's it done running that track? Well, it's circular, so it keeps going and going and going. So it's an imperfect kind of cycle. Although it looks like a circle, so you think, oh, it's running a complete circle. Now, you think now of a runner, though, running the same track, but there's a beginning and an end, right? They're not running endlessly. Most races are not, let's see how far you can go, right? And then they just run indefinite distance, and whoever drops dead last is the winner. There's a beginning and an end. There's a completion to it, and that's what we mean by a perfective aspect, is looking at an action that is done, complete, has like a beginning and an end, has a set time to it, and so you might look at the aorist this way. I know the word perfective is there, but this this might cover the aorist because it has a sense of, the aorist has a sense of completeness, doneness. It's just talking about the action as it stands. Remember, aorist means unmarked, but you can think of it as a completed action. This is done. It's no other further commentary than that this happened. It tends to happen, it tends to be a tense, the aorist tense, tends to have a perfective aspect, and it gets associated with the past tense because if you're talking about something in the past, usually it's something that's done, right? Like it happened. So it's oftentimes used in a narrative in the past, and sometimes it got closely associated with the past tense because of that. But really, it's just because that verb is completed and done. And the stative then would cover the perfect and the pluperfect and the future perfect. And that's talking about a state. Stative means there's a state of affairs that now is because of an action that was done. So we've sometimes illustrated it like this. There's an action that has had continuing consequences until the point of view of the speaker. So it's a present tense in our English sense of the present tense, where I'm at now. Okay. The pluperfect is simply the stative in the past. So pluperfect is this thing happened in the past. It had a continuing effect. You could say to another point in the past, but really just at the point you're speaking, and you are here now talking about the state of how things were in the past.
Nothing you're ready is coming up there right now.
Oh.
Were you ready?
Oh, yeah. I wonder why that is. Okay. It's, can you see that? Huh.
Did you go into black ink or
No,
something?
just decided, let's see here, let's try that again. Maybe something crashed.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I don't know what's going on there. Okay, always something. All right, let's try that again. So, well, in any case, the stative refers to the state of how things are. The perfect has to do with from the point of view of the speaker now, right? Something happened in the past, and now I'm in a state of affairs or situation because of that thing from my point of view now. The pluperfect is talking about a past event and say past me was in a certain state of affairs because of something that happened, and now I'm in that state of affairs at that point in the past. But I'm talking about it from here, you know, in the present, you could say. So, and then the future perfect is the same thing, but in the future. So we're talking about a state of affairs, a state of being, a condition that someone is in because of, you know, because of this verb, and in the past, present, or future. So the perfect, interestingly, does have very clear time ideas behind it, even though in general, we're saying Greek doesn't, not that it cannot talk about time, but in general it's maybe not as concerned about it, but the perfect does have these forms, like very, very clear forms that indicate time. So what is the paradigm? And I thought, here, you tell me what you think the paradigm is. All right, so describe. Take a second to look at that, and huh?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys read the chapter. Oh, you guys are cheating. No, just kidding. Yeah. So, no, I'm just kidding about that. Yeah. So, okay, yeah. Well, describe what you're seeing here.
So it's a doubling of the first consonant. And
Okay.
An E or epsilon added in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ka thing happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, ka. Yeah.
Something like this, huh? So, and then the endings. This looks like, including our, you know, curveball there. The nu, sigma, nothing, mente, nu, or san. And so you're seeing similar kind of endings, although here you've got a sigma, iota, a little bit different than san. You're seeing reduplication here, so you have the first consonant of the word being reduplicated with an epsilon after, and then you have this ka. Ke here, but ka everywhere else. So we could say it like this. The perfect tense is obtained by affixing the perfective aspect morpheme, ka, to the stem of the verb, attaching the secondary active suffixes, so this is the ka part, and then affixing the affixes is this part, and then prefixing a reduplicated syllable to the beginning of the verb. Perfective reduplication consists of the initial consonant of the verb stem plus the vowel epsilon. So luo starts with lambda, so you reduplicate it, you get another lambda, and then you put an epsilon after. So you get, to pronounce it, leluka, lelukas, leluken, lelukamen, lelukate, lelukasin. So let's say that together. We'll start with the first, we'll just go down here this way and down this way. So leluka, lelukas, leluken, lelukamen, lelukate, lelukasin. Do one more time. Leluka, lelukas, leluken, lelukamen, lelukate, lelukasin. All right.
The accent moved.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry about that sounded very funny.
Yeah. And again, the appendix 1, if you wanted to go through the accents and why that's derived, it is kind of an interesting read. And again, it's like this puzzle thing. Like, okay, what rules apply to this to transform it? But you're already learning a lot of paradigms and charts and things, so I don't want to confuse you too much here. But does it seem kind of apparent? So if you're looking for clues about what you're looking at here in terms of this verb, as soon as you see a kappa in there, you're going to start thinking perfect. That's one of the great indicators. But you do have a secondary indicator, which is the reduplication, the le. So you have two ways to notice whether this is a perfect or not. And we're going to find out there's exceptions to every rule, which makes it helpful that there are two ways to kind of identify that this is a perfect. Now, there are some exceptions as far as the phonetic characteristics of that initial phoneme. If the verb stem begins with an aspirated consonant, phi, theta, or chi, then the corresponding unaspirated consonant is used to form the reduplicated syllable. Why doesn't he tell you which ones they are? I don't know, but they are pi, or p, tau, and kappa, as in therapeuo, where you get therapeutic from, right? And therapy from, it's from the Greek word to heal, therapeuo. The perfect is te therapeuka. Te therapeuka. Te therapeuka. And it's not the therapeuka, right? It's te therapeuka. This phonological process is called deaspiration. Now, this was confusing to me. I mean, the principle is very simple, actually. It's not that hard. But this is confusing because of the verbiage. I don't know if this is Black's verbiage. I think this is just Greek, grammar verbiage they created, I don't know how long ago. But when I learned linguistics, a couple decades ago, they used the term aspirated and unaspirated very differently than this. So I learned this before I learned linguistics, but then when I took linguistics, that's not how they use aspirated and unaspirated at all. In linguistics now, if you use the term aspirated, it's talking about the puff of air that comes after a stop, or what's called a plosive as well. Stops and plosives are letters that don't have a continuous sound after them, like p, b, t, right? You can't continuously say p. You can only say it once at a time. Versus a sound like, yes, or you know, those, you can go as long as you got breath, right? But p, t, d, you can't continue that sound. It's called a plosive. Aspiration refers to the puff of air or lack of it after. You might say, for English speakers, pa, ba, they always have a puff of air. So if you go pit and you put your hand in front of your, at the beginning of a word, a plosive in English is always aspirated. Pa, blow. Okay, you're going to feel a little puff, all right? Now, stop. Say stop. Is there a puff of air? Stop. Stop. I mean, I can do it without stop. Stop. Like compared to pot. You do pot with your hand in front of your mouth, pot, you feel that puff of air, you say stop. Like no puff of air. That's aspirated and unaspirated. So that's an aspirated P at the beginning of a word in English, p, but not, it's unaspirated at the end of a word. Koreans have unaspirated stops at the beginning of words. So if you can imagine doing that P without the puff of air at stop, but at the beginning of a word, Koreans do that, and it's a different kind of sound actually. So like pop, you know, that's like rice, pop. There's like no puff of air. I don't know how I make the difference of that. Like pop. I cannot explain to you what I'm doing in my mouth or throat to make it not aspirate like at the beginning. It's kind of a funny, it's a funny thing. I don't know if Japanese has any kind of similar, if the B sound, if it has a puff of air or not with it. In any case, it's interesting phenomenon. Obviously, it sounds different without the puff of air and not the puff of air.
Maybe it's more guttural.
Pop, 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 like.
Like
It's a
saying,
labial thing.
Yeah, well, they're also, okay, so some of it is also has to do with like how voiced it is and unvoiced. Again, voice is when your larynx is shaking, you know, the vocal cord shaking, and not. So I think some of it is when it's unvoiced, it's maybe easier to do it. So some people would hear pop and hear more of like a P sound, a slightly more P sound than a B sound. And there's all kinds of things going on. What's crazy is that a kid growing up has no idea of these categories, right? And they're just going to learn to say, you know, in Korean, a voiceless stop, which almost sounds indistinguishable. You're certainly not putting your hand to your mouth to feel that it's aspirated or unaspirated, but a kid will learn to do that just by hearing it. And there's no Korean class where they're telling you, okay, you need to make this consonant unaspirated or anything like that, right? So language is, again, it's a pretty crazy thing. I think it has, you know, it's a fingerprints of God. Anyway, that's a long story because it's sort of confusing after the fact here about unaspirated and aspirated. What really this is linguistically, okay, is that phi, theta, and he are fricatives. A fricative is a consonant made by, you know, closing the aperture of your mouth and passing air through it continuously. So you can make a f sound almost indefinitely, but it's a constrained sound, right? It's between like your upper teeth and your bottom lip. But you can do that for a long time, right? It's not a stop. right? And fricative just means that the sound is creating, friction, right? You can also do, and that's a sound coming from your teeth to your tongue. You can do it as long as you have breath. And he is in the back of your throat, right? And you can do that as long as you have breath. And what is happening is in reduplication, I think it's more like they don't want the fricative reduplicated. That's awkward as in terms of the sound of it, putting those back to back. So they said, okay, turn it into its equivalent stop. Now they're using here aspirated, unaspirated. That to me, it's not. It's a fricative to a plosive or a stop. But that's the language. I don't know if that's technical Koine Greek grammar language. If you look at any Greek grammar, they're going to say it that way. It's just not the way most linguists would talk about what's happening here. If it's helpful, though, to think of it, think of deaspiration here. Aspiration is like adding an H to the letter. So like, I'm using English letters here because it makes sense in English, right? Pi, the P sound and the H sound makes a F, right? And tau, and say the H sound, like TH is like a Th, right? And then kappa and H sounds kind of like Bach, right? We're not talking like chopper or chapter. And now you just have to deaspirate it, and just remove the H. So now you got pi, right? You got tau, you got kappa. I know there's no C in Greek, but what makes the C sound is kappa. Does that kind of make sense? I'm just trying to help you out here. I gave you a lot of confusing stuff, more than you need, to make it more complicated, and now I'm trying to make it simple. So pi, pi, tau, kappa, for phi, theta, chi. Clear as mud. All right. Some other exceptions. Okay, some other exceptions. If the verb stem begins with a double consonant are those consonants that sound like they have two sounds together, right? Like psi has a p and a s. Zeta has a d and a z. Zeta. And then xi has a k and a s sound. So all the double consonants, psi, zeta, xi, or with two consonants other than a consonant plus lambda or rho. So you will have words that are like plerao, which starts with a pi and a lambda. So no, that's not what we're talking about here. All right, we're talking about words like gnosko, where the root of it is gamma nu omicron, and that's two consonants together. So this rule number 2 is having to do with anything starting with a double consonant letter or double consonant actual letters. Two consonants next to each other. So they were not a big fan, you could say, of like, trying to think of a word that starts with psi. Have you learned any yet? I can't think of one. Well, they don't like the idea of like peps, whatever. That's too many. You've got too many consonant sounds happening at once. Geg, gno, geg, no, car. So what do? There's no reduplication, just the epsilon. Now, what's your temptation possibly going to be if you see an epsilon at the beginning of the verb? You may think, oh, this is the aorist or maybe the imperfect. So what's your clue that this is the perfect? The ka. So here, you're going to look for that. That's pulling the weight of knowing it's a perfect. So double consonanted words, except for those that have a consonant plus lambda or rho, like plerao is to fail, I think. That's okay. Thirdly, if the verb stem begins with a vowel, then the reduplication takes the form of the temporal augment. I got such fancy words for this. As in hetoimazo, because there's a rough breathing mark. Hetoimazos begins with epsilon. How do you reduplicate that? You don't. You just make it longer. The perfect is hey toimaka. Hey toimaka. I have prepared. So you turn the epsilon, and even if it's an alpha, if it's any other letter, iota, it's going to turn into an eta. It's very unusual to see a verb, not very unusual, but it's unusual to see a verb starting with an eta. So immediately you know something's up, something happened to this. Something happened to this verb, and you see the chi, this is a perfect. So there's either an alpha, iota, epsilon in front of this. If I'm looking for it, well, what's the root of this? Now you got your Bible software, you hover the mouse, hetoimazo. But say you're at home with your Greek New Testament paper, you're in the cabins in the woods, there's no internet, and so you're like, I have my lexicon and my Greek New Testament. Let's look up this word. Well, what are my options here? It's probably a perfect, so this is likely an epsilon. Hetoi ma. Well, if you look up hetoi ma, because you don't know, might not know about the zo and all that stuff going on, you're going to only find hetoi ma, so you're going to find it really fast. So there's no, it's going to be helpful in that kind of scenario. Okay. Now, some verbs do not contain the kappa of the perfective aspect morpheme ka in their perfect, pluperfect, or future perfect forms. These verbs are known as second perfects. Just like there were second aorists, right? They did not have the sa as indicative of them being aorist. There are second perfects which have no ka. They're conjugated exactly like first perfects except for the absence of the kappa. As with first and second aorist, the distinction is one of form only, not of function. So these are all perfects, even if they don't look like perfects. That's all that's trying to say. It's a difference of form, not function. So here we have grapho, to write, or I write. And you see the reduplication here. Ge grapha, ge graphas, ge graphen, ge graphamen, ge graphete, ge graphasin. But where's the kappa? No kappa here. How can you tell this is a perfect? Well, again, you have two indicators, right? So what do you notice though? I do see a consonant in epsilon. That's probably reduplication. Reduplication means perfect tense. So you still have a clue, even there. Here are some other second perfects, which have a second perfect. And Black basically says, you just got to remember these. There's a finite amount, okay? But these are some that occur a lot. These are commonly occurring Greek words, akuo, patho, pempo, and pasco. Their second perfects are akekoa, pepoitha, pepampha, pepantha. This is a tongue twister. Somebody's here. So akekoa, pepoitha, pepampha, and pepantha.
You know that akekoa?
Yeah.
It seems like they should spell it with an omega, because that's how you pronounce it. Omega.
You're right.
Not an
All right, ka. You know what's funny? I've only ever heard it pronounced akekoa. Yeah.
They changed it.
Yeah. That's so interesting. And I'm not sure if that's just because it sounds better or because it sounds awkward to say ka. Yeah. So maybe we're just saying it in terms of like the Greek, Koine Greek community, because it sounds more awkward to say There's not a whole lot of places where this happens, by the way. So, that's so funny. I did that without even thinking about it. Keikoa. Good point. Okay. So any questions about these perfects? or the second perfects in the form of them. So your big clues, reduplication and kappa/kappa alpha, puts you in the perfect realm. I know you got to memorize these paradigms, but they do follow one that you've already learned: nu, sigma, nothing, mente, nu, or son. And with the idiosyncrasies thereof, where in the first or the third singular, it's an epsilon at the end, and the third singular, the first plural, looking different than you might expect, all that stuff. So, any questions about that? All right, well, let's talk a little bit then about the perfect as a tense. So the Greek perfect refers to a state. Remember, we're talking about resulting from a completed action. As such, temporal focus, often more on the present than the past, though the perfect depicts an action that is already completed. So that's why we're talking about a state of affairs because of a previous thing. So necessarily the thing happened in the past, right? But we want to talk about a state of affairs that we're in now because of that. So this is a good way to make a distinction. Acts 2:2 versus Acts 5:28. Same word is being used here. You have a sound filled the whole house. Aorist, active, indicative. In 5:28, it's you have filled, perfect indicative, Jerusalem with your teaching. Now you could use filled in both cases in a sense, and it would still make sense. But you could even use have filled in a way for both, and it would be hard to make a distinction in English. But it's certainly profound, or more profound, and Black says, and many would agree, that it's very exegetically, exegesis is drawing out of the text its meaning to use the perfect versus any other tense. Perfect tense is saying that this happened, and it's now we're in a state of affairs where your teaching is all over the place here. It's filled Jerusalem, and we're still sitting in it. Versus in Acts 2:2, do you think that house is still filled with that sound? No, right? Like now, looking back on it, it happened, and maybe it did, it filled the house, but there's no commentary on the state of affairs that left things in. So, we had someone launch a firecracker at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night the other day, and it was very loud for a minute, and that sound, it filled the air. Right, it was like almost right in front of our house, shook the house. But seconds later, there's no more sound. It just popped, and that was it. Nothing else happened. It didn't change anything. It didn't make things different. Right. That's like an aorist. Now, if I were to talk about that in terms of commentary, and if I use the perfect tense for the sound of it going off, right? And they use the perfect tense for this rocket. It went up in the air, and it popped off, and it just seemed to fill, the night. Then I'd be making a commentary somehow, some way, that single firework, it put me in some kind of state afterwards. I was upset, or my ears kept ringing after, or actually what I did was I went outside, and then I tried to find out who did it, and then my neighbors came out, and we're kind of talking, and it's those kids over there, and kind of made us upset, right? So I'm in a state of affairs because of that firework. Now you might start using the perfect to describe some of the narrative and stories that were happening there. It wasn't just that this thing happened. It's because of it happening, it kind of put me in a state of affairs there. So that's a little bit of the distinction or the nuance or the sentiment that's going on. or commentary. So that's what he's saying here. He brings up Archimedes, famous story, and I think we talked about this already, but apparently Archimedes discovered that the law of buoyancy while taking a bath. He's reported to have scampered without his clothes through the streets of Athens shouting, Eureka, Eureka, which we pronounce Eureka, Eureka. But it's they didn't miss the rough breathing mark when they when they got it into English. So Eureka, Eureka! I have found it. I have found it. And what Archimedes apparently meant by using Eureka, the perfect of Heurisco, was that the discovery had become a part of his intellectual awareness. That now has shifted his way of thinking, and now he's in a different state of thinking because of this discovery. That things are not the same anymore. Versus if he says if he had found a drachma on the street and lost it when he got home and then he found it, he probably would have just used the aorist Huron, I found it. It says nothing about the existing state of affairs. So there's a lot of the distinctions that the perfect makes. It's almost always you have to look at it when you see the perfect. You have to think about it. Aorist, unmarked, just probably telling a story, no commentary, very little commentary. Imperfects and present tenses, that's just telling you, the action's continuing. And I get it, it's habitual or continual. But when you see a perfect, you're saying things change because of this. Things are no longer the same because of this. It's, things have been different. We talk about like post 9/11 world, right? Or post COVID world. Things are in a different state of affairs because of these events. That's the sense of the perfect. So 1 Corinthians 15:5, Paul uses the perfect tense, Christ was raised. Now, that's not, you know what I mean? Like, you could just use the aorist for that as a simple fact. And there are places where Paul does just talk about, he was raised from the dead. It's just a fact. Yeah, of course. But if you were to use the perfect as he does there, you're making a commentary that he's risen and he's still risen. He's not dead. He didn't die again. He's still alive. And that changes things. That changes things for Jesus. And if the same thing happens to you, it changes you. When you are raised from the dead, it is not to die again. You're not just going to happen to have been resuscitated and then have to die. That's not what happened to Jesus. He wasn't just raised to death like Lazarus and then died again like Lazarus. He is perfect tense raised. He's still risen. So, other examples, John 1:41, you can read them there. We have found the Messiah. Moses has given you circumcision. What I have written, I have written. That's Pilate there speaking. He has said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. You could just say, he said to me. He said to me, my grace is sufficient to you. I'm recalling the time when I had this, voice from the Lord after I had the thorn in my side. He said, my grace is sufficient for you. Done. Aorist. But Paul is writing this after the fact. He has said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. And you know what? I still need that. I still believe that. I still need to live there in that. Right? It's a little different, but not insignificant to put it that way. Hebrews 1:4, he has inherited a more excellent name than the angels and so on. So the perfect tense, always, you got to look at it, you got to appreciate it, you got to find what is being said here in using it. It's important. Okay, any questions about then the perfect tense? And you'll know a lot of things by observation and context. You get a feel for it once you start looking at it a lot. So yeah, did you have a guess?
I had a question on that table, on
Yes.
page 75.
Yes.
The archaic core.
Mm-hmm.
Archaic core.
This one, yeah.
Why doesn't the A, the R,
Mm-hmm.
change to a new? Because it starts with a vowel.
Are you talking about at the end, why there's not a new there?
No, it's the alpha at the beginning.
Oh, why doesn't it turn to Ada?
Yeah.
And not a new, but an Ada, yeah. Like this. right?
Yeah.
Or let's something like that.
Yeah,
Like,
because that's the rule.
right.
It's allowed, you change it to an eta.
Yeah. So what's probably happening, this is, a little guesswork, it did. It's here.
After,
Yeah. That's my guess. Because, it's like, let's see here. So my guess is something like this, right, is happening where they, it's almost like this, and then this turns into a, so it's almost like it reduplicated the ak. And maybe because there's already kappa there, it was weird because you're adding a kappa for the ka, and then there's just too many kas, and okay, we'll reduplicate maybe the first two syllables, so ak, and then that's my guess. But I could be wrong. I know.
well, they have the rules. There's some rule with it.
That's what the second air, second perfects are. So we're just gonna throw a big old monkey wrench into it.
Right.
So,
it's like,
yeah, I know. I get it. We're like, and it's funny saying that because as the English grammar is so all over the place with so many exceptions to rules. But you see the value now, though, of rules, right? Like how it makes things so much more straightforward, and you appreciate. So Korean actually has a pretty simple alphabet and a very simple pronunciation system, such that we could, if we had 2 or 3 hours today and you practice 2 or 3 hours tonight, you could be reading the Korean language today, one day, easily. It's not that hard. And there's very few exceptions to pronunciation. The grammar is kind of complicated, but the phonetics of it is pretty straightforward. So we like rules. That's why and I know I made this point a couple of weeks ago, but when God gave rules to the Jewish people, that's putting it very easily, right? Like, you're telling me I can know what holiness is if I just follow this finite set of rules. Even if there's 613, at least there's rules, right? And boundaries. That's actually much easier to live, just like you're seeing right now. Like if there was just follow the rules every time, life would be so much simpler. But the problem is, at least in terms of holiness, is there 613 commandments, that define holiness? No, it's infinite. Really, truly, it's infinite amount. And God is being so generous and kind, like telling us, just stay in the lines of this coloring book. That's how I'm making this, I'm even being gracious and giving you the law. Just, here, 613, lines in this coloring, just stay in them. And he still can't do that. But I know, my impulse is, I wish things would just follow the rule. But language almost necessarily is a very human thing. It changes, it shifts with people and time and culture. It's squirrely. You think of how quickly kids come up with slang, and how that just can spread like wildfire. That's just how language is, and because of that, there's always going to be exceptions to rules. And so, do you codify a rule like this in Southern English? You don't say, swing-ing. You say swinging, right? And you don't do the G. It's for most words, right? And anything, there's no G at the end of it. And that's practically a rule. Now, is that a descriptive thing or a prescriptive thing? You know what they teach in Southern schools? Do you think they teach that, now kids, when you see the word jumping, don't pronounce that G. I'm pretty sure they're all teaching you like ing, ing. Yeah.
We don't like the sound.
Yeah. That's exactly what's happening, right? It's a descriptive thing that we're doing there. I know we're a little bit off the beaten path of the subject here, but yeah.
You mentioned that about language changing, and now we've got all three the kids home. They have words, we have no idea what they talk, and they have these words for things that we have no idea what it means.
Oh, yeah.
They all know. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you know?
Oh, yeah.
I'm low-key gonna something.
Right. Yeah.
It has two meanings.
Yeah. I know, and it's fun if you hang around young people. It's almost like there's a whole other language going on, and you think,
For the texting now.
yeah.
I mean, they just abbreviate
And then
things
it
like,
comes in
what does
perfect
that
as
mean?
well, like
Yeah.
NGL.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And even with not gonna lie for NGL, you notice what's happening there too is with this word.
Yeah.
Gonna.
What's gonna? It's going to. It's two words. Gonna. And now well, we can go down we're going to go down. Yeah, it's not like NGTL, right? Not going to lie. It's NGL. It's not gonna lie. And I'll be honest, sometimes, when I write out my sermons, because I say gonna too, I think, in the pulpit, sometimes I write this, and in my notes or manuscript, and I used to be, I guess I'm not now, but I used to be such a stickler. Don't use abbreviations, don't use like even stuff like this. And it's all out the window now. It's like I'm like, should I write my sermon the way I speak, or should I write it like it's like an essay and then just say it the way I speak in the pulpit? And we all have our different accents and things. And I started doing this, like, Bing's gonna kill me, because Bing is pretty good about, he says he struggles with writing it the way I say it, or writing it the way like it should be written, grammatically, punctuation, everything. So he's very good about that. And if you look at his notes, just the punctuation, everything's very good. And I'm in this weird halfway place. But when I started, it was, I would be a huge stickler for paragraphing, all that kind of stuff. And now it's write it like you read it.
Actually, it's only getting shorter now. Like people, like a few years younger than me now, they don't say gonna, they say gun.
Yeah. Not gun lie. Yeah, not gun lie. Yeah. So it's like this.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie.
That's like my sister, people call me G.
Like you're a G.
Yeah. They call the kids sometimes call me and Sam for some reason, even though he's like almost their age, intern Sam, Unc, which is short for uncle, but just any older person. But it's not even like uncle, it's just Unc. But this is in a sense, this has always been happening. The issue, I mean, if you think it's an issue, I guess, is because of technology, this kind of stuff can spread much faster and permeate and become the culture much quicker because of media in general. Not just internet, of course, radio and TV did that as well. And print media, to a certain degree, sped along these kinds of language changes. So, yeah, there's a certain propensity in a lot of language to simplify things, which is what is happening here from going to gonna to gun. It's like you're running. You have less breath, or you're in a rush, or what's happening here? Okay, I know we're getting a little.
1984, it's the contraction of language. Now eventually it'll just be good back.
Yeah. I think again, language always changes and always evolves. One of this is, and if you don't mind, a little bit of a tangent here, but one thing I thought was interesting taking classes is they said one of the fundamental rules they had as they started making linguistic discoveries and finding tribes and other, people groups and understanding their language. At first, they had an approach that was evolutionarily based, meaning that, and this is, this is say, late 1800s, early 1900s, is racist. It was some tribes, some cultures, some peoples are less evolved than us. They think when they would put Africans at the New York Zoo and stuff, right? Because they were subhuman, they were less evolved, and they would assume that their language was also less evolved. And so they analyzed it from the point of view of this is a lesser sophisticated language. So when they heard clicks, right? And things like that in African languages. This is primitive language. We're going to study it as a primitive language. And it was difficult for them to study it that way because they were trying to make analogies to non-language, correlations, even just like animalistic kind of thing. But it wasn't until linguists were really looking at it and said, these languages are as sophisticated as any other language. There's nothing about this evolutionarily more primitive or lesser in any way. So one of the principles now, or rules of linguistic study, is that all languages are equal. You study them on an even level. They're different, but there's no less sophisticated language on the planet right now. And it's sort of anti-evolutionary if you think about it. And of course, racism fell a little bit out of favor when it started to be weaponized. Darwinianism started to be weaponized. There's lesser people groups, there's lesser languages. Identify lesser languages, see how our languages, our modern, sophisticated languages evolve from these lesser ones. No, these are just as sophisticated, just as many rules and complexity and all those things. So it's a basic tenet. And so it's, unless things have changed in the past 20 years, I don't think they have. There's an evolution of language from the sense of there was like a Proto-Indo-European language, that's the theory. But it's not that was any less sophisticated than the languages we have now. It's not primitive or anything. It just, we came from there, but that doesn't mean they're lesser language. And what was before Proto-Indo-European? No idea. So we have no idea where languages, there's only guesses and theories for how it made a jump. If you're an evolutionary, biological evolutionary thinker, to go from animals to our human language, there's a huge gap. In my opinion, insurmountable gap that we have no evidence for, because language is primarily auditory and there's no records of it. And so that's what, if you're a secular scientist, that's what you're appealing to. Well, there was some kind of evolution, they didn't write it down, so we can't have any possible, so all we have are guesses. But there is such a huge gap between animal communication, which can be very sophisticated, and human language. There is no comparison. So anyway, Gary, you have a thought on that?
David Black kind of equates that, because as I grew up, when they talk about the Bible being in Greek, the New Testament, because the Greek language is so much more sophisticated and you can communicate things so much better. And he dispels that very early, saying no languages. So you can tell that is more recent. From when I grew up, it was still considered there were lesser languages and there were.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, because even when he said that, for me in my mind, I went, that's not the way I heard it.
Yeah. It is, the language of Greek is the language of the New Testament, not because it was sophisticated or better. It's because it was the language everybody knew. It's more about, this being the language that everyone all over the Roman Empire, they still knew Greek. Everybody knew Greek. Yeah, it was the, when we say lingua franca, What you mean by it's a language that everyone uses, although literally it's like French language. Because the French are like that, I guess. Lingua franca means the language, it was the lingua franca of today, although English now is the lingua franca of today. I know, it's irony, but okay. So, all right, that was a good little side table there. The pluperfect. The pluperfect. So this is the past of it. So what is happening in the pluperfect? Anyone want to give me some observations? Here's the paradigm of it. What do you see?
The addition of the epsilon.
Epsilon. That is our past time morpheme, right? So we see epsilon. Helpful. What else do we see? Reduplication. Are one of the markers of the pluperfect. What else do we see?
K.
The kappa. And then what else?
More epsilons.
Yeah, more epsilon. Epsilon iota instead of the alpha of the perfect. So the perfect had kappa alpha. Here instead, the connecting vowel, they call it like that, is the epsilon iota. So we have many. You remember what was what's the word here? Luo, right? and the root of it, lu. Now look what happened. Look how big it got. Lu-ke-san. From our simple little luo. And there's all, what happened to you? There's so many things happened to you. Well, this is having a language that relies so much on suffixes and prefixes and reduplication to tell you about what's going on, to modify the verb. So you have it right. Those are all the different ways that we distinguish the pluperfect. It's formed on the stem of the fourth, the perfect active principal parts. So the pluperfect being past tense, it has that augment. So you have this and the reduplication and the epsilon iota as the connecting vowels. So you really can tell by the reduplication and this K that we're in the pluperfect. And so, again, we're just adding little things to things you already know. We're just building on paradigms, endings, suffixes that you've seen before. It gets a little confusing. You got to give yourself hints, right? Epsilon at the front, something to do with past time. Okay, so right now what you know is aorist and perfect, now pluperfect. Reduplication, that's a perfect thing. Kappas, that's a perfect thing. So you use all these hints to get you to get in the right frame here. So pluperfects are easily identifiable because vast majority have that highly visible kappa, epsilon, iota. These are called first pluperfects. But I think there are 5 or so words are not so well behaved. Second pluperfects, just like you have second aorist and second perfect, but there's only 5 or so. What do you mean 5 or so? Because there's some debate about, I suppose, whether it's a pluperfect or not. But even though they don't have the kappa, they do have that kind of curious A. If a word ends with epsilon iota, yes, it could be the present active indicative, third person singular. Remember, O, ace, A. But the key is to look for the reduplication at the front. So really, reduplication and A, you're almost certainly in the pluperfect. It's not like there's a whole lot of pluperfects either, okay? But an example of the pluperfect tense found in John 9:22, the Jews had agreed that anyone who acknowledged him as Messiah should be banned from the synagogue. Here the pluperfect emphasizes that the previous arrangement of the Jewish leaders was still in effect. So they had agreed, and in the context of the time that Jesus was ministering, that was up until then, until he was crucified, well, even after, I suppose. Yeah, definitely after. they should be banned from the synagogue. So it's the perfect in the past. Pluperfect. I don't know why, again, it's like we have a future perfect, that's a paradigm. Why didn't they call this the past perfect or something? Why the pluperfect? Just because, I don't know. Again, so now you're talking about like how linguists made grammars, and someone got there first when they were writing a grammar about Koine Greek, and I don't know if that's a Latin thing or what. It's just such a weird, it's such a weird prefix. I don't know any other word that has plu in front of it. So I have no idea even what it means. And now you got to do a whole linguistic study on where does the word pluperfect come from? Past perfect.
Learning all the tenses and stuff and all that is almost as difficult as learning the language.
Yeah.
They have words for everything.
There's a whole nother vocabulary to any field you get into, right? So you go into any field, they got their own parlance and their own vocabulary. So, you go into engineering or you go into any field of study, really. Then you got your military. There's military lingo and all that. So everyone has their parlance vocabulary, and linguists have their own. And then this is like Greek grammar linguists have their own. Again, that aspiration thing threw me off. So, okay. This is a unique thing for oida alone, which has only perfect and pluperfect forms, but essentially they are present and past in meaning. So they look like perfects and pluperfects, but the perfect has a present meaning and the pluperfect has a past meaning. So for purposes of parsing, meaning if you see oida, you're not gonna parse it as a perfect because it looks perfect, or a pluperfect because it looks pluperfect. You're gonna say present active indicative, blah, 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 for this. So it's oida, oidas, oiden, oidamen, oidate, oidasin. And in the imperfect active indicative, although it looks like a pluperfect, what tells you it's a pluperfect? Again, you have the eta, and you have this augment on the vowel that makes it an eta. Remember, if it begins with a vowel, when you reduplicate, you just lengthen it, it becomes eta. So a dane, a days, a day, a daymen, a dete, and a dasan. And you might wonder, where did the iota go from oida? And it's there, it's right there. You have a little iota subscript below the eta. So our iota is preserved there, but it doesn't make a difference. Remember, the iota subscript down there makes no difference to the sound or pronunciation. So it's still just eta, a dane. So this is what's telling you it's pluperfect. So pluperfect in form. And this one, we call it perfect in form. But when you parse it and when you translate it, it's present and imperfect or past tense. So just an idiosyncratic thing. Any questions about that?
It's only those two words.
Well, for oida, it only has, I believe, these two forms. There's no like future and aorist passive and all those things. There's nothing like that. It's only, this is it. You only see this word like this in one of these two. And it occurs a lot. That's why he's pointing it out to you. To know, or I know. It has a parallel in gnosko. I know. There's slightly different shades of meaning. So the Hebrew word for no, I think it's yada. Yada. Because I know there's a form in Hebrew that sounds like Yoda. And that's I think, why Lucas called him Yoda. I think it was a Hebrew thing, Yoda. And I wonder if there's a similarity to oida, to know. So they might come from like a similar branch, up higher. Okay. In general, then, just to do a quick review, when we talk about Greek verbs, you are looking for clues about how to parse it, how to identify the meaning of it. At the end of a verb is always the person number suffix. In this case, men is almost across the board in all of these paradigms, and te, right, in the second person plural. So beyond that, then, you're looking for clues to understand it, like a pastime morpheme epsilon at the beginning, like any kind of augments or morphemes that come after the verb root, like sa or ka or ke, or something as conspicuous as reduplication. And by identifying these, what's the suffixes and the morphemes, you can piece together what tense the verb is. So, this one, you have a future time morpheme, and it looks like nothing else. So it's probably the future tense. I hate to say to guess at it, but oftentimes you have very limited options. That really, it gets a little more confusing when you get later into participles, which a participle is a noun that's been turned into a verb. Or I'm sorry, a noun that's been, got that totally backward. A verb that's been turned into a noun. So guess what, when you parse them? It'll be something like present, active, indicative, masculine, nominative, singular. So you will have a parsing of tense, voice, and mood, and then gender, case, and number. So, it's
Like a gerund?
kind of like a gerund in English, kind of. There are some distinctives, but these are verbal nouns, you could say. So it's like, aorist, passive, subjunctive. And I don't know if there's subjunctive participles, but like that, and then like feminine, dative, plural. That's when it gets a little tricky. That's when it gets a little tricky for now. For now, and for the most part. Okay, verbs though, pretty straightforward. You're looking for endings, you're looking for morphemes and augments, you're looking for reduplications. It's very easy, actually, I think, when you look at this, to say what they are. This is the aorist. You got the saw there. May not even need the epsilon.
What if you put the sigma over the u?
You mean
like when you break up the top one and the second one, I struggle with personally when I'm working on it is knowing to separate. You have the sigma of them in the same place.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the sigma go close to the O and become, or the sigma go? I don't know.
Like this, right? Like this, or like this. Like to not identify the sigma as part of it, right? Like, what if you thought there's a word like luso, lambda, epsilon, sigma, or something?
But that confuses me as I'm trying to parse out things. As I end up getting them, because I think I'm so smart, I'll move it over and go, it's this, and then you look it up and say, oh, that's wrong.
Yeah. Some of it is exposure to it, and you'll get a sense of what looks like a Greek word and what is not, or what could be a Greek word or Greek verb and what could not. Just like there are some things you know could not be English words, like framped or something. You just know that's not an English kind of word because you wouldn't put letters like that together. Like it sounds weird, and even though it might look very close to, say, front, why not? But there's just something about it, like you get a sense it's not, it wouldn't be an English word, or it's not. You get kind of that same feeling.
One of those when I scrap.
Yeah, yeah. So, trying to think here. Yeah, I understand what you mean by that. At least as far as like some of these are concerned, because then you might be tempted to be like this, right? But
knowing that Lu is the root.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Because you know that that's only going to be those two.
Right. But there are things like you don't ever see whenever you see men, for example, this is a verb suffix. It's a person number suffix. And if you saw this word here, you would know this is not a connecting vowel. So you'd look back and say lusa as like a verb or something. And you would know this is not possible as a verb, because this would have to then be lusao. Okay? For this to be possible, right? It'd have to be something like lusao. We will get to a whole class of nouns that are called liquids, I think. Is that how they termed it? Where are we? No? Do we not? No, we do. Oh, is it at the... Am I going crazy? All right. Well, in any case, maybe I'm going crazy. You have some nouns that end with vowels. So one of them is harao, to see. Right? So how do you conjugate that? Is it like hara'e? Right? So there's a whole class of nouns that end with vowels, and you don't get these kinds of endings with it. They don't look like this if it ends with a vowel. I say that so then you would say, okay, well, I see a sigma next to this. So it's much more likely, the aorist morpheme. That would make more sense of this alpha that's sitting right here. And then, and I see a past time. This is the aorist active indicative. So again, a little bit of sleuthing, a little bit of puzzling it out will help. Certainly with anything with reduplication, it's nice. And kappas, you're in a safe place. These are perfects. These are perfects. So, any questions?
Yeah, I got.
Yes.
On page 76,
Mm-hmm.
under paragraph 73,
Yes.
the very first paragraph, it says, because the pluperfect forms are adequately identified by reduplication and by their distinctive endings, the augment is often omitted.
Yeah.
Which augment are they talking about? Does augment always mean the prefix, or it's anything added to it?
Yeah, right. I think here they mean the kappa.
Oh, okay. So sometimes but this is already saying that the kappa is omitted. So why would he say sometimes it's omitted? The augment is often omitted. Oh, he's just emphasizing the fact that the kappa is omitted.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
I thought he was talking about something else.
Yeah.
Okay, because he always says. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, got it.
Any other questions?
Oh, I got many.
I don't understand.
Okay. What part?
So which one omitted?
I think he's talking about the kappa. I had the same question last night when I was reviewing this. I'm pretty sure he's talking about the kappa.
Kappa.
The K in the kappa.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I think, for example, because I think what I did is I looked up some pluperfects. I want to say I looked up some pluperfects last night, and then a lot of them were, not a lot of them, but some did not have kappa in them, but just the epsilon iota. But here, I can double check. Let me see if I can find one for you real fast. So there are 86 to 88 words. So like, yeah, like I think 5 or so, remember the not so well behaved. Now that might be a comment that's not from Black. Did Black say that, or did I get that from somewhere else? No, this doesn't look right either. Let me get back to you, but I'm almost positive he's talking about the kappa. And I thought I looked at this last night, but I cannot find my notes. Here we go. And that's no, all the examples I have a kappa. I think that's what he means, but let me double check. For some reason, I have it in mind that it's kappa that he's talking about. Well, it's either that. Oh, you know what? It might be the epsilon.
Epsilon.
Yeah. Let me get back to you on that. Yeah, I looked it up. I looked into it last night. I came away last night thinking it was the kappa, but because you have like in the in say this one, there's no kappa here in these. Maybe that's why I was thinking that. But I'll double check for you. So what augment are we talking about here? It might be the epsilon. Fair enough. I'll look at that. It's like, why don't you tell me, Black? Which one do you mean? Oh, yeah. You know, it is.
It's the epsilon?
Yeah.
Oh.
Since the pluperfect is the past tense, it has an augment in addition to the reduplication. So he means because the pluperfect forms are adequately identified by the reduplication by their distinctive endings, the augment is often omitted. So he means the epsilon, the past time. I'll double check to make sure, but that makes sense of some examples where there's no epsilon in front. Now that I just look here. So, sorry about that, yeah. Any other questions?
I think from a language pedagogy perspective, it's just killing me that he throws all regulars and irregulars in one chapter. It's like, here, do the regulars for a while, get used to that. Okay, now let's throw the irregulars at you.
Yeah.
Like a typical.
I think he's trying to, one of the things I think Black does is trying to get if there's things that happen a lot in the Bible, you should just learn this to get you into the Bible quicker in a way. Like say for example, Oida, it does come up a lot. So you're gonna wanna know it. And hey, it's happening in the place where perfects are being perfect and pluperfect is taught, so we'll throw it in there. But say akuo and pay like the second perfects, if that's what you're talking about, they occur a lot.
Yeah.
So it's helpful to know them early on. And I think he's got to focus on, in terms of vocabulary, words that occur so many times and on all the most frequently occurring words, to try and get that in the vocab quickly. Oh,
See
okay.
what he's doing with pacing, but it's a killer. And with those guys who were taking his class, like, I'm assuming it was just a 2-week class or something, and less than a day, and then the
6
original book
weeks.
for 6 weeks.
So they have, it's at Masters they had a thing called Gladiator Greek, which was, just a few weeks intense, like 8 hours a day or something, for a week, like a couple weeks.
I feel better whenever I think about those poor people. It's the next day.
I know, it's like,
Yeah.
where's this
It's not humanly possible.
Yeah. The teacher famously for that class, a wonderful guy, Dr. Farnell, he's an Italian guy, and he would come in on the first day of Gladiator Greek, and he would have the gladiator
Nice.
suit of armor on, and he'd give him a speech, about how maybe not many of you will be standing, after this. But he was a really fun guy, and he had, a sword in his office, a
It'd be
gladiator.
cool to do a full Greek class and then do Gladiator Greek after that, so you're reviewing it rather
Right.
than intimacy.
Right. I know. And yeah, those guys had it tough. And I found the chapter, by the way, on contract and liquid. That's the word I was looking for, contract. So contract words in chapter 19, they end in a vowel. And so if a word ends in, a verb ends with a vowel, then they follow, it's still OSA, mente usi, but there's certain idiosyncrasies with it that make it look different, a little different. So that's how you would know, say in the case of this, that the word is not lusao, because if it was an alpha omega ending, then in the men, it would be like lusomen, because the AO, the alpha, would lengthen with the O. So we'll get there if we get there. But you have that's where actually accenting helps out a little bit to understand. So yeah, what do you do if a verb ends with a vowel? Phileo, which is love, agapao, which is also love. Both end in vowels. So what do you do when you add o, se, mente, usi? And you have some interactions with the vowels. So if you knew that, you'd also know why this is probably not lusao. It's not a word in Greek. And it wouldn't look like this. Okay. Well,
Another
yes.
Back on page 68, where it talks about altos, special cases
Yes.
of altos.
Yes.
You would conjugate that depending on what it's referring to.
In the special uses, or?
Yeah, special use.
Well, you don't really, you don't conjugate nouns, you conjugate verbs, so,
Right, so, but see, like in number 4 on the bottom, wait a minute, number 5 on the bottom, or even number 4, it's not autos, it's alte,
Mm-hmm.
altoi.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on what it's referring to.
It has to match the number and gender.
Right.
If there is a number and gender involved, say for number 4, aute lege, you would know that you, the author, are talking about a woman speaking, so you'd use aute if you knew that it was a woman, she herself says,
Yeah.
right? So,
So when there's a when you say conjugate, what does that? Isn't that when you're doing the different like OSA?
yeah, for verbs, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So when you're not talking about verbs, it's not conjugate. I use conjugate.
Right.
It's not that.
I don't think that's what they call it, because you can think of it like you're manipulating the verb to get it to say, you're molding the verb to communicate what you're wanting to communicate as far as the action and so on. Whereas for the nouns, you're not like manipulating the nouns, you're conforming them to their role.
Right.
You're conforming them to a role, and you're describing, when you say the gender, case, and number, you're describing their role in the sentence versus, and so you're not really manipulating those, but you got to manipulate a verb to get it to say what you want it to say.
What do you say instead of conjugate? What do you say? Is it decline?
That might work.
Okay. So
Let me see here. If we look at, okay, and the inflection. The inflection, so in chapter 4, verse 26, the inflection of a noun is called a declension.
so that's what you would say.
yeah,
I would say, how do you decline altos?
Yes, you would, yes. Yeah.
Declining. So the declining of altos.
Yeah, the declension, yeah.
It has to match what it's referring to. It's not always altos, it can be alpine or alte.
So, so for those uses, in the case of autos used as the intensive autos, there's it's always going to be, since it's with the subject, it's always going to be in the nominative.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, for intensive autos.
Yeah, it will be.
Because it's with the
Yeah.
subject of the verb.
Yeah.
So that will always be nominative. But in like any other pronoun in other circumstances where it's just standing in the place of another noun, it's whatever role it plays in the sentence. So if it's a dative or genitive, it's just whatever role it plays in the sentence.
But in these special use altos.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
it's going to be nominative, and then it's going to match the number and gender of whatever you're replacing as a pronoun. Yeah. Good. Any other questions? All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you again for giving us life and breath and every good thing. And we ask that today, as we go about the rest of our time on this planet, that we might be fruitful in the knowledge of you, that we might go and be participating in the life of Christ as we engage with family and friends and strangers, that there would be an essence of grace in the gospel and all that we say and do and think, and that maybe our time together studying Greek and your word might encourage us to do that. And so thank you again for this time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you, guys.